Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's about 11 o'clock now, so looking at starting. If someone can raise their hand just to say that they can hear me, so I have at least some comfort that I'm not talking to myself. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So today's session is on how to get a pension sharing report quickly. That's the endeavour. Just a couple of housekeeping bits is that I'm on my own today, so if you're asking questions, I will attempt to pause between slides where there are questions to see if I can answer them. If I can't, I'll do my best to have a look at the end. Today should last about 40-45 minutes. After this session, you will be sent a recording. Let me just go back. You should be sent a recording of this session, and you will also be sent a copy of the slides. So you can expect to get both of those things by the end of the week. I think that's it on the housekeeping stuff. So just to move on, let me just, there you go. So the objectives today is to, as it says on the tin, one would hope that at the end of this you can understand a bit more about what can speed up the process of getting a pension sharing report. Part of that process is understanding where you can get a pension report or pension sharing report from, what you should ask for and what you shouldn't ask for, because that can affect the speed of getting a response. And if you understand the process that we go through in generating a pension sharing report, then I think we'll be able to identify some areas where we can shortcut things a little more quickly. So the agenda is, for those of you who may not have heard about BlueSKY or know what we do, I'm going to just give you a quick update on BlueSKY. I'm going to talk about understanding what it is you want and letters of instruction. As I say, we're going to talk through the process of getting a pension sharing report, a little bit on how, well, quite a lot all the way through about how you can speed the process up. And at the end, I've got an example, which I hope, or a couple of examples really, of what brings all this together and will illustrate some of the things I've been talking through as we go through this session. So just briefly regarding BlueSKY. So BlueSKY are a firm of chartered financial planners, not actuaries, but we've been doing pension sharing reports now for about 20 years, ever since the legislation changed and pensions could first be shared. We're still open for business. We never closed over the lockdown period. We always had one person covering the office. Everyone else managed to successfully work from home, and we were pleased that we managed to maintain our turnaround times for our work, including the pension sharing work we do, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a while. I also want to just briefly talk about the fact that we do have increasing inquiries, and I don't think we've actually seen the COVID effect yet, if there is a COVID effect, but how we've managed the pension sharing report inquiries we get. If you haven't seen a BlueSKY pension sharing report, here's a quick screenshot of such a report. You think you would find them quite different from actuarial reports. As financial planners, we try and write our pension sharing reports in a similar manner to that which we write for our standard, if you like, financial planning clients, in the sense that we want to get to the answer quickly. Some of our clients don't read probably beyond the first 2 pages of a report, so you want to get to the answer quickly. If you want to read the detail, there's a detail behind that, and that's what we do in our pension sharing report. So you'll find the grids and the answers to your questions early on in the report with detail further behind. And the second slide to show is that later on in the report we would show where there's a difference in income. So if we're looking to equate income at, let's say, 67 when the state pension comes into payment, we will show that profile of the differing incomes up to that point. So we'll show in a graph and also numerically, and we're increasingly asked to to do cash flow work. I'll cover cash flow work later on, but whether you have instructed us jointly or singly, we can add in some cash flow modelling, which shows how the outcomes might look. Now, I've just got a question, so I'm just going to pause for a moment. I've got a couple of questions. Okay. Now, some people are saying that they're not getting the screen share, so I'm just going to do a new screen share. Has that answered any of your questions? I've got some people raising their hand, but oh, okay. So has that solved your problems? I'm very sorry. I don't know why that occurred. So right, I've got 3 questions, and those have answered. So I've answered those questions. So sorry about that. Technology is not always my friend. So let's move on. I hope that this is now this was working for all of you. So just moving on to what we do and what we don't do. So what we do is, you will have guessed by now, we do pension sharing reports. We also do a lot of shadow expert work, and that might be where you've already had a pension sharing report from an actuary or somebody else, but you want someone to help you through it as to what the best option is for you and your clients. So that's some of the work that we do there. We have a lot of case discussions with solicitors and mediators, and we get sent clients from mediators where they want us to meet their clients in the same room, and we do a lot of that sort of work as well. And because we are financial planners, we can give financial planning advice in our pension sharing reports and the process. So it's different from actuaries. So actuaries can't provide financial planning or financial advice themselves. So that's probably one of the things that differentiate us between accountants. We will. I think one of our fortes is where there's lots of schemes, and if there's lots of schemes, there's often lots of permutations as to how you can share those schemes, and often that needs a little bit of financial analysis. And also we're seeing a lot of higher value schemes where there might be lifetime allowance issues coming into play, and that's work that we will take on. And of course, once you've come to an agreement, we can help you through with the implementation of those pension shares. And one of the things the PAG report talks about is that solicitors shouldn't close their files until the case has been implemented, because that actually is when that full piece of work has been concluded. So going back to, well, what we don't do, what we don't do is that if the share is likely to come from a scheme where the only implementation option is an internal membership, then we don't do that work. We would suggest that you use actuarial services. And the reason that we do that is, as I mentioned before, because we have a lot of inquiries, we just had to say, right, we're going to limit the amount of work we do. And because internal option work is work where we can't add much value over and above that which an actuary can do. So if the if the if the only sharing option is an internal membership, so that will be things like uniform services, teachers, NHS, local government schemes, or civil service, where the only way of implementing a pension share is an internal option, then we're saying, as mentioned before, we're suggesting that you should use an actuary. Again, referring to the PAG report, who would you go to? The PAG report talks about using a pension on divorce expert, which it shortens to a POD, which I can't say I'm warm to greatly, but section D, the appendix D of the PAG report, talks about the criteria, experience and qualifications that you should be looking for when you appoint a single joint expert or a pension on divorce expert. And you might want to refer to this in a letter of engagement to make sure that the person you instruct satisfies the relevant criteria in this rather extended list, to ensure that you are using a suitably qualified expert. Well, let's start with all this, with do you even need a report? And I'll refer again to the PAG report, so it helps if you read the section in the PAG report. And to summarize what it says on this particular section is that if the CEs are over £100,000 approximately, then you really should be considering getting a pension sharing report. As I've mentioned before, it's always useful sometimes to pick up the phone and have a chat to talk the case through. But in particular, public sector schemes you should be careful with, because the cash equivalents quoted are often a lot less than the cost of buying the same benefits on the open market. So they might be more valuable than you first imagine. The other point is DC, or defined contribution schemes. So these are schemes which look like personal pensions, pots of money and funds, where you may be aware that there's these things called guaranteed annuity rates or enhanced annuity rates, or sometimes there's guaranteed growth rates attached to some of the pensions, which actually make them more valuable than their quoted cash equivalent. On occasion, they can have attaching benefits. So some schemes might have life cover attached, or what they call waiver of premium attached, which again enhances the value, and you just have to have a second think about whether you're going to share that scheme in favour of another one. And while I'm on the PAG, it is being quoted more and more in judgments. There's more and more reported cases where the judge has extracted parts of the PAG report and sought guidance from it. So there's, I think the first case that Judge Hess reported on was H&W, but there's another couple of cases there that you may wish to read. Remember, you'll get copies of these slides, so hopefully that's of help. And of course, just another quote from the PAG report, just to endorse the fact that it is strongly recommending that, well, it makes a point that pensions are difficult to value and they're difficult to divide, and the assistance of a pension on divorce expert may be needed whether the case is contested or not. So under the heading of, well, let's understand what you want, and many solicitors for some time have said, why does it take so long to get a pension sharing report? Because we've experienced that, thankfully, thankfully it hasn't happened with us, but 6 months from start to finish to get a pension sharing report is quite a long time. And we offer two routes. There's a normal route, which you'll be used to. The normal route of getting a pension sharing report is on the right hand side there, which is where you want a detailed report. It necessitates us gathering quite a lot of information. There may well be complexities that are present within the case. Might be multiple schemes, or there might be lifetime allowance issues. You might have some scenarios you want to be considered, or there might be offsetting questions, or even cash flow modelling, and all of that takes time to work through and put together in a understandable report. And that's the bulk of the work we do, but it is worth highlighting the quick overview. So if you want a quick feel, or maybe I should say quick overview, then we can offer that rough guide, that overview, where you might have a case which is coming up, and you're going to court in a couple of days, and you haven't had a pension sharing report, but you want to understand what the headlines are, what the direction of travel might be, what's the best approach. Could we have a guess? Could we give a rough guide of the magnitude, or what is the likely outcome if we were to do a full pension sharing report? And on occasion, and if we've got enough information to go on, we can do that work. So get in touch. We normally do it by email, because then you don't have the time necessary. You don't need the time necessary for us to produce a full report. So it's worthwhile having a conversation, because in some cases I think it's been quite helpful. So let's just walk through the process that we go through in basic terms. So life starts with an inquiry or a letter of instruction, which you will send us. We will triage that case. We might come back to you for clarification where things need clarifying, funnily enough, and then we can quote. And that we aim to do within 24 hours. So we think we're pretty quick at doing that. If you then instruct us, this is a slow bit, because we then have to collect the information. Now, that's the bit that we're not in control of, because although we have a very good process for only asking for the information we need, chasing the information and checking the information, we are in the lap of the gods for many pension administrators who currently, dare I say, hide behind the COVID excuse of delays. What's helpful here is that if your clients have access to the information or have it already, it can be really helpful for us to have it, because it can limit the questions we need or the time we need to wait. Once we've got all that information, it goes to our technical team, who will do the analysis and the calculations and the report generation. And once that is done, we have a case checking, a peer checking process. So cases are checked, and then the report is issued. And it might be that after that report is issued, you have some further questions that you may wish to ask, or maybe some clarification. And at the end of that process, you might ask us to implement or help your clients with implementation or other financial planning. Now, the process, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but to go from here to the case checking a report issue, we've quoted for a long time, 4 to 6 weeks after all the information is received, and you shouldn't underestimate that once all information is received bit. But having got the information we want, we will be able to generate a report within 4 to 6 weeks. talking about the letter of instruction, we have some resources on our website, on the BlueSKY website, under a resources for solicitors tab, I think it is. So we have a general letter of instruction. It's a draft letter. It is not the finished article, but for many, it might just give you a little bit of guidance as to what sort of thing to ask for and what to put in that report. So it's there for you to download. Generally, and the PAG report will support this, is we would expect to see a question which is probably going to ask how we would share the pensions to create equality of income at retirement. It may be, and it often is the case, that you will want some kind of perspective as to, well, how much would that share changed at different retirement ages. So we quite often would see or encourage 2 or 3 different ages that are likely ages for your clients to consider retirement. And generally, it might be, if you only picked one age, I think our advice would be to look at how the pension should be shared to produce equality of income when all pensions have come into payment. And of course, the state pension will normally be the last pension that comes into payment. So it might be, most of the cases we now see are at age 67. So how have we generated, how should you share the pensions to create equal incomes at age 67? Under offsetting, we quite often see offsetting figures. I've got an example coming up in a moment where it hasn't, the letter instruction wasn't specific, but if you can be specific about the sort of offsetting calculations you want to have considered, that's enormously helpful in us to be able to produce helpful figures for you. It might be something like, to generate an income of X at an age Y, we can do that, and again, that would normally be based on some kind of expectation or need that your client has. Although as an expert, it is incumbent on us to pass comment where we think relevant. We think it's sometimes useful that you recognise that we could, or you invite us to comment on ways in which outcomes can be improved or things that should be taken note of along the way. So I'm going to give you an example now, which is a direct copy from a letter of engagement with no twiddling or anything like that. It's one we received quite recently, and you'll see there's 8 or whatever questions being asked. And I just want to work through these because I think there's some good messages in here. And the first is that the first question has asked us to look at providing a report to advise on the income that is that will be produced on the basis of a 25, 33, etc. pension share. Well, in this particular case, there were about 6 pensions to consider, I think. And of course, what it doesn't say here is this is 25% of each scheme, all the schemes, some of the schemes. So you can see there that was one point that needed clarifying, and maybe it would have been easier just to say what's the share necessary to create equal incomes. So what we had here was 5 questions. The next point, and it's a point which I'm going to illustrate in the example at the end of this, is how would we share the pensions to achieve equality of capital equalisation? So that's one question, I suppose, based on an assessment of the capital value. And what we assume by that is, I think they're alluding to, is us commenting on the value of the CE and whether it was a fair value. So that wasn't quite clear, but um, under the principle of sharing pensions to provide equality of income, the question to ask us to equalise capital value is a bit of a red herring, in our opinion, in most cases. But nonetheless, let's say that that was one extra question we wanted. There was a couple of questions alluding to offsetting here, but this one wanted us to provide details of the offsetting options available, the analysis of them, the pros and cons of them, and our preferred option. Now that's an offsetting textbook, which actually hasn't been written yet, but that's asking for an enormous amount of information, some of which I'm not sure how helpful it would be, but weren't sure where to go with that. But the next thing talked about offsetting and the appropriate deduction that should be made for any proposed pension share for each £100 of cash retained by the other party. Now, the pension share was about £300,000, so it equated to about £300,000 from, in this case, the husband to the wife. Now, if they wanted us to consider offsetting in steps of 100,000, then that's 30,000 calculations. Sorry, that's 3,000 calculations. It does have in brackets there, or alternative figure if you deem this to be more appropriate. So, so that was an interesting point there. What we've got here is another, I was going to say horror, but problem, which I know a lot of your clients will want, but the PAG report has quite strong opinions on this. But this is pre and post marriage accrual, so apportionment or ring fence benefits. So it wanted all of the above detailed or calculated based on pre and post marriage accrual. Well, that's doubling all of the above. The others are fairly standard stuff, I suppose. A bit at the end we liked because it asked us to comment, effectively asked us to comment on the above. But you can see the point here is that because of all the permutations, I mean, if you extrapolate it, because of the multiple calculations, the total calculations on the face of it could be anywhere between 120 to 30,000 calculations. Now, I know that's pushing the boat out a bit, but you can see how multiple questions will ramp up the answers you get. And if it's too big, well, all we see is that one person goes for the big figure and the other person goes for the, argues for the little figure. And I'm not sure quite how beneficial a grid with hundreds of calculations is in. So, this would be a case where, with the greatest respect, it might have been done by a trainee or something, but it would be something which we would go back and ask for a bit more clarity on. So generally, you'll see in our draft letter instruction the best sort of cases we can see that we deal with that will enable us to get on and do the pension sharing report quickly is how should the pensions be shared between the couple to create equality of income at ages 60, 65 and state retirement age, and if the wife in this example wishes to retain X £1,000 of equity in the family matrimonial home, how should the pension sharing one be adjusted to reflect this? And I suppose the point here is I think the pension sharing reports we can do most quickly are those where we've been asked some quite focused questions which would indicate that there's been some dialogue with the clients, there's been agreement with what you want and why you want it, and that's in general been quite helpful. So what not to ask for, and I've mentioned this before. This is the question that says, could we calculate the true market value or the fair value of the stated CEs that we've been received? Is, I hope to demonstrate later, is of academic interest only, and it's of no real relevance to the case. We'll hold that a minute because I hope the example that I've got will give a bit more information to help you understand that. I've talked about too many options and how, in our view, it's just a bit unhelpful. And the PAG report, if you look at the PAG report in section 12, it talks about the needs, the cases where you ask for different periods of service, where pre and post marriage, or what it calls apportionment. And the direct quote from apportionment is that apportionment of the pension according to the period of marriage or relationship is rarely appropriate in a needs case. So this is all about needs cases, which I think is the majority of pension sharing cases, where needs override anything else, and the courts, of course, or the judge has the ability to go and get or access assets which are outside of the marriage. I'm going to pause because there's a question which said, when you refer to income equality, is this limited pension income only? Yes, it is in this instance. We do get cases where investment income is asked to be considered as well, but investment income is generally very different from the generation of a pension income, and I think there's always problems when you are mixing pension income questions with investment income, because they're two different styles of income. And what we're looking to generate in a pension sharing report is an income which is ultimately guaranteed through the purchase of an annuity, which of course investment income doesn't normally do. But hopefully the example at the end will elaborate a bit more on that. If we move on to speeding up the process, so how can we speed up the process? We've talked about this process before, but as I've talked about, is if you understand what you really want to know, then the letter of instruction is generally much more focused and has a limited number, and therefore you can add in a limited number of questions. I've mentioned before, if you have information that your client has provided, then do let us have it. And of course, we will often come back to you and say, your client's got a pension with the NHS, let's say, and rather than right away and wait 3 months for them to respond, they will normally have access to their portal, their pension portal, and be able to print off a statement from their portal, which may contain all the information we need. So clients have, I think, on an increasing occurrence, actually access to some of the information we want. And as I've mentioned before, if you want to speed up the process and you're just looking for some guidance and some sort of magnitude and general direction, then you can pick the phone up and we can discuss just what you are looking for. But I'm going to come on to an example now. I've got another question pop up. Oh, question was, thanks. for answering that question. Right, so here we go. This is a real life example. The figures have been slightly tweaked just to make them a bit simpler to understand. But we've got a husband here with a Transport for London pension and a SIP, which is a personal pension. You'll see the CEs there. Now, the benefits that the Transport for London scheme is the actual guaranteed element, and the SIP is assuming an annuity purchase, and the TPS here is a teacher's pension. We always add in, or we normally recommend state pensions to be included because they can be quite different. So here we go. This is the point of the Transport for London scheme, quoting £138,000 as a CE to buy the same benefits. To buy an index pension of £3,450 on the open market would cost £174,000. Would need a pension fund of £174,000 to buy those benefits. Now, that might be true, but so what? What use is that figure? All we know is that that scheme is not offering a particularly generous CE, and you should trust that the pension on divorce expert would know that, and therefore, where possible, would not want to share that scheme because it offers poor value. You'd look for a scheme which offered better value. As I've mentioned before, this SIP pension is, as we're assuming, annuity purchase. In all pension sharing reports, we will produce equality of income by assuming that an annuity is purchased. That isn't financial advice to do so. It's the only way of producing equality of income, which is comparing apples with apples. We rarely would look at cases where you've asked us to look at pension drawdown scenarios, because you're just not comparing like with like, where there are defined benefit pensions in existence. So what we can see when we do a triage of the case, we can do this sort of stuff. We'll do this sort of stuff and immediately see it's not rocket science necessarily, or sometimes it's a bit more difficult than this, but it's evident from this case that the direction of pension share will go from the husband to the wife. So that's what we've got to equate. As we've discussed before, we've got poor value, and so we shouldn't share that. Better value with the SIP, so we would look at sharing that. So this is the amount of money we're going to share, and hopefully there's enough to share to equal incomes. And what we would do in this instance is recommend that the wife sets up her own personal pension pot, if she hasn't already got one, to receive the pension share. So we'll see that the direction of travel is from the SIP to the pension sharing pot that the wife set up. And in order to create equality, we've moved some money from the SIP pot to the wife's pot. Now, while you pause, or I'm going to pause because I've got a couple of extra questions, which are so the question is, does it matter then if you only have a benefits information statement, maybe a free annual forecast, rather than requesting a CV for purposes of the divorce? Well, I'll get into that. And do you deal with pensions already in payment? So the answer to the second one, yes, we deal with pensions that are already in payment. And let me come back to that one about getting the benefits information statement. So what we're looking at here, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving, but the point is made here that look, the wife has a teacher's pension scheme, CE 113,000. Now, in order to get that CE statement, we probably had to right away, we will have had to right away and possibly wait 3 months, up to 3 months to get it back. It's not normally that long, but it could be up to 3 months to get that back and to get that value back. And actually, we're not even using it. It's irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is this. And the question asked is, well, this, getting a pension benefit statement from the pension rider, most clients can do very quickly or immediately online through their own portal. So actually all we need, if we know the direction of travel is from husband to the wife, all we need to know is what this benefit is, the 6,800. The CE is an irrelevant, and that's part of the triage that we do. So we're not writing away for information and waiting for weeks for a piece of information, but actually when we get it, we go, well, we didn't really need it anyway. So that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. What we've done here, as a result of this movement of money from the SIP to the wife's personal pension, and we haven't touched the Transport for London scheme, which we know didn't produce a very good value for money, is we've created an equality of income, £17,350. The other thing to note on this, which a pension on divorce expert would generally do, is it would look not only to equalise incomes, but it would try, where possible, to equalise the style of incomes as well. And what I mean by that is, with the husband, his TFL and his state pension is effectively guaranteed benefits. They're not investment related. And where possible, we would want to try and create equal elements of guaranteed benefits and investment related benefits for each party, because that's fair, because we can't always get there. And in this case, we haven't quite got there, but we've done a really good job. I think we've got a long way of getting similar guaranteed benefits for the husband and wife. Now, I don't want this to generate, if you like, more questions on our letter of instruction, because just as the pension on divorce expert would know where to share the pensions from to get maximum value for both parties, they would also look at trying to generate similar levels, if possible, of guaranteed benefits. You don't have to ask that question. It's what we do anyway. But that's just the hope. That's hopefully a worked through example which brings together some of the stuff. You know, we don't necessarily need all the information. We don't need you to ask, you know, do the pension values offer fair value? Look, we can do that, but it's really an academic question of no real relevance. But there we go. So out of that, the points to note are, just to bang on about this, apologies, but knowing the true value of a scheme is of normally no help. You've got to trust the pension and divorce expert to generate the best outcome for both parties, because that's what we're looking to do in a single joint expert report. The styles of the pension income will be equated if possible. And just a general note is that normally tax-free cash is left within the fund to generate more income for equality purposes. Now, that's because it makes it a much more simple exercise for you to do. You know, if you start talking about taking tax-free cash out of the schemes, unless there's a real reason to do that, that's gonna take longer to do. It's more challenging to do. It's more simple if we can leave tax-free cash within the scheme. So personal pensions, although they can provide 25% tax-free cash, we would assume that that's not done, because it makes things a lot simpler. And as I mentioned before, annuity rates are used in pension drawdown cases. Annuity rates are used rather than pension drawdown, and in a lot of cases we will underwrite annuity cases or where there are health issues. So health issues can lead to us using higher annuity rates than standard rates. So here we go. In summary, nearly the end now. In summary, be clear about what you want in the letter of instruction. It should really be an objectives-led letter, in our opinion. Do pick up the phone and discuss the case and ask for suggestions, because that's what we do, and I think that's where we get some good outcomes. And do consider, if you want a rough guide, if you are running out of time, we can help with that quick overview. Just finally, consider if cash flow modelling can help. We see more and more requests for this, particularly in our shadow expert work, which gives an idea of what a pension share might produce in retirement, and whether there's any horrible red shortfall. And it just, if nothing else, it helps achieve clients' expectations, or set expectations as to what their expenditure post-divorce can be. So we can model all sorts of scenarios. So I have done a separate webinar on cash flow modelling. Just to say, here we go, read the PAG report. The PAG report is quite a long document. You'll find each section has a sort of executive summary at the beginning, and if nothing else, have a quick read through of each of the executive summaries at the beginning. If you don't know where to download it from, you can download it from our website. Finally, just a bit of a reminder of the things that you can expect from BlueSKY. And I think that's it, other than to say thank you very much if you've listened this far. And look, you've had emails from us. It'd be really useful to know what you think, and whether you want us to do a webinar on something else. We are running this webinar again next week, so yeah, you will have had this in your email. So if you want anyone else to listen to it, then let them know. I've got one further question, which reads, in terms of age of retirement, you mentioned giving, say, 3 options, but is there a preferred single age to use? Yes, there is. Thank you for that question, Paul. If there's one age to use, we would say use state retirement age, because at state retirement age, which now is generally 67, let's say, at 67, all your pensions will have come into payment by then, and that is the point in time where equality should be. That's a target age for equality. Now, because we would normally suggest that pensions are taken when they naturally become due, so a lot of DB pensions, final salary pensions, are have retirement ages of 60 or 65. Then we would show you the profile of the individuals taking their pension income from their final salary schemes at 60 or 65, and then the state pension at 67. And we will have equated the income at 67, but by the pure nature of that, we may have produced different incomes leading up to 67, which is why we show you the graphs, and which is why we can detail what that income profile looks like and what the differential in income is up to state retirement age. So thank you for that question, and so there we go. So look, thank you very much. I think you've got you will have email addresses if you want to ask any questions. You'll get a copy of these slides and a recording. So thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.